it just kind of focused on that, especially from like a racial point of view. And I think that's where a lot of people kind of got turned off to that book. But the science seemed solid. I mean, take it for what it is. I mean, fucking just a college graduate. But.
Yeah, well, it makes me feel dumb even just like that little bit of dialogue about it. You know, one, I'm fried, still kind of recovering from the being out east, and two, I just even taken. I took a very small version of it, but like even just those 5 questions that I answered makes me want to throw that computer. I don't have the patience for it, really. It's like you start seeing all the little dots on the screen and like trying to figure out what's the pattern. Whereas I think some people, like my oldest sister's one of them, really thrives on that kind of stuff. For me, I instantly go into panic mode and want to shut down, and I don't even want to do it. But the reason I'm doing it is I need to find I was looking for one that I could take that didn't have, I mean, have you seen them before with like the little dots and the little shapes and you're supposed to pick up on the pattern or something like that?
So as a matter of fact, I did actually, so I lied earlier. I have indeed taken an IQ test, but it was administered by the U.S. government. And so most people don't know about this. It's actually illegal to base your hiring practices off an IQ test unless you're the United States government. And if you are the U.S. government, before any entrant goes into military service, you take the ASVAB test, which is essentially one of the, I guess, fucking examples of an IQ test. So take it for what it was. I took that back in, 2001 or 2.
Yeah, I took that as well. When I don't know when that was. I think it would have been about the same time, I guess.
Interesting. But, why did you take it?
Because I was going to go into the Navy.
Is that right? I didn't know that about you.
Yes, sir. I took the test. I was all set to go, and then just last minute decided not for me.
Yeah, it's okay. It's not for a lot of people, man. It's I don't even know if it's for me, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, thinking back, I'm not even sure. I think just not knowing what I really wanted to do, but knowing that I was a bit of a screw up, and I thought that would help straighten me out, and I'm sure it would have. But I think I was just doing it because I didn't have anything better to do, and then I decided it's probably a really bad idea to move forward with such a pivotal change in life without really understanding why. And so,
God, and it's funny because I'm trying to think of how many instances where I've probably done the same. I'm just like, all right, fuck it, let's go. Let's find out. I mean, it's you look at the minimum enlistment's 3 years. I mean, when you're 18, that's a long time. But when you look at right now, if you had to do something for 3 years that you didn't want to do, and be able to change it thereafter, I was like, okay, or if you had to do like 3 years in jail, like you can do that. You know what I mean? It's not the end of the world. It's not great, but like 3 years is, yeah, it seems like less sort of a commitment now, I would say. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you make a good point. I think it was just being young and rebellious and not wanting to do. I always hated authority, for one. I always hated authority. It was something, and this was a topic that I actually was wanting to talk about and write about, really based on what I was reading on Left Coast Caveman, the article that you just recently posted, and just this idea of confinement, and knowing that from a very early age, I sensed in myself a rebellious nature. I didn't like being told what to do. I hated authority. I don't know if it was because coming from where I came from and just the hardships that I dealt with in life, or if it was just in me as a child. And I'll probably end up writing about it, but I'm trying to figure out how to weave it into our narrative line for the Left Coast Caveman project, and really starting to think about the confinements of society in general, and the confinements of like how people make their decisions. And I was talking to my 19-year-old niece this past week, being back home in the Midwest, and sort of recognizing a lot of the similarities in her as I experienced in that same age, and just this this mental wrestling that you go through and trying to make the good decisions about what you're doing with your life and worrying about the people around you and the structures around you. And like at that age particularly seems to be a lot of outside pressure to do what you ought to be doing, or to have it figured out, or to be on some sort of path towards figuring it out. And really all of those structures are set to confine you into this regimented view of what you ought to do, rather than understanding that it's always going to be a path of exploration and discovery it's the worst thing you literally could do is try to confine yourself into this box of what you ought to be doing. I would say, but that in that conversation though, it's a little bit of a wrestling, because having already written about like totem and taboo culture, there's definitely, this is something that I think we've discussed and written about in the archives of Left Coast Caveman. There's something valuable in society building. Maybe it was in the long format post that I did on Left Coast Caveman YouTube channel about totem and taboo culture. And Freud wrote about this, and I tied Freud along with a couple other concepts. But there's definitely benefit to these structures that are put in place, but they started way back in the day as a way to prevent cultures from like incestual, incest and these kind of things. And it just continued to evolve into, okay, how can we structure society into being what we want it to be? And whoever's in power and whoever's making those confining structures seem to be the ones that benefit from it, and society benefits from it at large. But ultimately, do you really gain a self-satisfaction or self-actualization or whatever you want to call it through those channels?
Well, I certainly think you can. But yeah, I agree. There's whenever there's profit to be made, there's a conflict of interest, right? And don't get me wrong, I'm a capitalist through and through. I love it. I love being incentivized. But, from a systemic perspective with the government and such, and the ways they subsidize schooling and forgive, or they provide, loans, which was kind of a new advent, I think, from like the 70s, where they started providing government-backed loans for education, which in turn was supposed to allow the students to, not have to work and go to school at the same time. And they're like, yeah, you can just fucking pay us back later after you got a great career, and the money's more there for you to pay it back, so it's not a big deal. And people are like, yeah, let's fucking do that. And so that became a thing. And because the government was backing these loans and providing, this quote unquote help, the schools are like, hey, well, since the government's backing this, like, we could just charge more. And that's been the case ever since, like, that advent of technology. And think about this, man, the fucking student loan is one of the only debts that fucking follow you, like, to death. Meaning, if you haven't paid it off and you start receiving Social Security, they will garnish your Social Security. Okay, if you die with that debt, you part of whatever fucking assets you had, like a portion of that will be parsed off to pay for that fucking debt. So it's complete, like, it's kind of a crazy concept if you think about it. And in turn, I mean, you think education should technically be becoming cheaper as technology goes on. You think about it, like education nowadays, you don't necessarily need an actual college to go to school. You can actually do it from, this technology. You don't need a book. You can do it from, like, you think about all the advents and the PowerPoints and emails and all the things they didn't have back then. But yes, college is fucking so much more expensive than ever before. I mean, it is kind of a scam. Not the college is a scam, but the fact, like, the pay structure behind it. I think a lot of people can definitely get lost in that. But if I go back to the two main things you want to, I would say, are most critical after like high school, the point where you're somewhat like, you're now in that story where you can choose different paths, right? You have some options out, up until that point, you're fucking going to whatever school you live nearby, and your parents are making you go there, and you really don't have a choice for the most part. But after that, that 12th year of education, you're able to now choose a few different paths. And I think, like, the big overarching, like, theme of a most successful path forward is to find one that gets you knowledge and experience. Those are like the two, like, most important fucking things during what, and you may get those, that might be a 4-year course, an 8-year course. I mean, the course, you look at it, it's an everyday fucking course, really. I mean, I guess it does somewhat slow down, but at that age, I do feel like it's most critical, because at that point you're lacking experience, right, and knowledge, and so that's where and it's fraught with perils, because you could choose poorly, and fuck, man, there's not a lot of people out there to try to help you choose wisely during that time. There's a lot of people like, yes, come to this college, fucking take out this loan, dude, we got you. You can pay that back for the rest of your life.
That's crazy to think about. Yeah, I think we're living in a very exciting time, and it's a perfect time for us to, having put work in the last 4 years on the Left Coast Caveman way of life, and really learning to understand what that is and what it means, to start developing it out as a community now, because there's so many different ways that I could take this conversation in terms of what this means. But when I think about that, what is knowledge? What is education? And what does it mean for somebody who's 19 years old now today, faced with this feeling of this is all bullshit and this is all kind of meaningless, and I'm trying to figure this out, and I've got the pressures of confining structures of society, whether it's this is what love looks like, this is what a relationship looks like, this is what a marriage looks like, this is what raising children looks like, this is what you need to do for a job, this is what you need to do to be successful. That's all shifting in real time right now, and we're almost getting back to and like our project is all about supreme being through modern hunting and gathering, and hunting and gathering in a modern context now is almost like the opposite of evolution. It's going back to a time where now we're bartering ideas, we're bartering value again. You no longer have to get a piece of paper really with a credential to get a job, to make money, to be successful. It's like we're starting to realize and peel back the structures of society to realize what's really important. And there's all kinds of content blowing up all over the place about, well, men and women need to realize what it means to be a man and a woman, and men who value feminine qualities in a woman and feminine women who value masculine quantities in men are starting to become more valuable, and even that content itself is making people millionaires. And that was never the case when we were a kid, when we were 19, and so that way something like, oh, sign up for the military and you can have 35 grand when you get out. Okay, that'll be a good boost, and then I can get a career, and then I can get a wife, and then blah 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 blah. So it's all turning. I mean, it's all different now. If you can hit a baseball, you can put videos online and promote those and teach technique and earn six figures doing that. That was not the case when we were kids. So it's really become this value commodity environment where community and like-mindedness and truth is becoming a value. Truth is becoming a commodity. Information, valuable information is commodity. Community around that is becoming a commodity. And it's like, how exciting is that for somebody that's that young? But then it's also, this is kind of spinning into the mentality piece that I wanted to talk about. And it's going to have to be a quick one, because I say that, and then the quick one for us is like 45 minutes. But the like, I'm becoming sickened by the amount of influencing going on. So it's sort of like, it's kind of like a dichotomy, if you will, or like a catch-22. It's like, it's the best thing happening right now, but it's also the most obnoxious thing happening, where if you can put out videos with some cool content and the stupid little subtitles that are like, everything is getting catchy, everybody's getting caught up in this idea of like making it, or clout, or the whole value environment, where it's really like, can you strip all that bullshit away and just live a meaningful, productive, worthwhile, like seeing the objective, like identify. This is why we always refer to it as the path, and everybody has the path, and like seeing the journey, but like seeing what it is that you seek to accomplish, making it something worthwhile, and taking action towards it every single day. And and figuring out a way to commoditize around that. That's essentially what it's all about. And like, you see people that get wrapped up in all this bullshit, and that's why they're unhappy. That's why they're upset. That's why they're frustrated. That's why they're trying to figure out what it is I need to do with my life, when it's really like, you should be excited and be able to strip all the bullshit away and say, like, the opportunities are endless right now. Really endless. I mean, for like your boy, my kids, like, think about the world that they're going into. Yeah, there's a lot that we could be fear-filled and say that it's scary, it's fucked up, it's crazy. But it's also pretty exciting when you think about, like, yeah, you like to make gluten-free pastries. You could be a millionaire doing that now. There's so many different ways to do it. And then I say millionaire because millionaire is kind of the new middle class, but as you know, to borrow from Grant Cardone, but I'm seriously speaking, everything is anything you can do to communicate value is valuable right now.
Yeah, it's certainly changing. I mean, we're definitely knee deep in. I mean, you think about us being essentially coming of age, going into the quote unquote workforce at around the time where the internet was really becoming ubiquitous, right? I would say at that time, it really wasn't on the phone just yet. I mean, in high school, I remember kids having pagers still. I don't remember emails. Everything was paper based. So we came up through a time, most of our childhood, without any of that. And then obviously throughout college, I think, and I went to college a little bit later, where I was able to, instead of go to the library to do research, I was able to use a computer, which was really fucking handy. Saves you a lot of time. You know, you have to fuck with a Dewey Decimal System, pulling out little stupid drawers and cards and all that stuff. But yeah, man, it's lots of opportunity, but there's also like the danger of that as well. It's just there's so much information. I mean, to go back to the analogy of like the library, you go into the library and it's kind of similar, I guess, to the internet or the YouTube, and in terms of you have a choice of what book you pick up, right? But I feel like there's more of an entry into it, right? So meaning like with YouTube or any of the other sources of information, you can easily be pirated to like this direction and just go down this rabbit hole of an hour of fucking nonsense, really. But sometimes it's kind of fun, sometimes it's kind of cool, but really you're not getting a whole lot out of it, I would say. But whereas like you go in that library, like you're checking out the books, and it's very similar in terms of like, you're going off of, okay, you got the spine, the title is the big thing. Same thing with these days with, you know, YouTube and other internet content. You pull it out, you got a picture, kind of similar to a thumbnail. But then you have to actually, with the book, you have to invest time into that knowledge. And you're going to be very careful as to how much time you invest in any sort of book, right? I mean, how many pages before you realize, let's say a book that's of cold source, meaning it wasn't somebody telling you got to read Herman Melville's fucking, Moby Dick, right? Then you go, okay, I might give that more of a chance because it's been recommended. It's a classic. Maybe I'm missing something here. Let's go through it. But like with just a cold, let's call it a cold book. You go in there, like you look at the first page, read a little bit. Maybe you'll read the back of it. Go, nah, not for me, right? Whereas with this YouTube stuff, man, like it's easy to just get fucking pulled because there's no like it's passive information you're getting. You know what I mean? You don't have to put any work into it. With reading a book, you got to put fucking work into it. You got to pay attention, right? If you want to actually get whatever the book is trying to communicate to you. With YouTube, you don't have to. You can just sit there like this. And you don't even have to press a button. It'll just keep fucking going, dude. It'll just keep going. So, yeah, I mean, there's danger. I mean, just with any new technology, man. And we're kind of in that point of infancy where we're learning the rules. We're learning that there needs to be some rules maybe, or that we have to instill them for ourselves more, like, which I like better, not that people need to provide me with rules. But it is definitely going to take a bit of, just strategic measure to help guide our progeny to fucking be able to navigate swiftly and smartly throughout all this information that's really just trying to fucking distract you and provide other people with, whatever I guess you get from it, a click or engagement or whatever that is. And it's easy to get distracted from whatever the fuck. Hey, man, you were trying to fucking write a book report and now you're fucking on YouTube Shorts or TikTok, whatever fucking. So, I mean, there's landmines out there for sure. But I think that's with any technology. And it just requires some education and practice and more than anything, probably some fucking discipline.
Yeah. And I think that will only lead to more opportunity for the willing to invest. And I talked about, and the willing, and again, it's always difficult for me to put things into words when it comes to the Left Coast Caveman project, but it's really a de-evolution. It's a pumping of the brakes towards this, hey, yeah, we're getting into this environment now where we're attached to devices and our attention span is becoming these clicks and little bits of entertainment and these hits of dopamine nonstop throughout the day, and really putting a screeching halt to that and starting to value primitive man and woman. And what does that mean? Masculine men, feminine women. Yeah, that's a big deal right now. But intellectual people and people who think about what it is that they're doing and not just consuming, but creating, and putting a strong emphasis around creating as a valuable means to do life. And just for that alone, for that sake alone, yeah, if you can commoditize it, of course, it's part of survival. You need money to survive. That's the unfortunate thing. But really a strong conviction and belief that if you put that energy towards that creative energy, that shifting from consuming and being led through all of these dopamine channels to then creating for your sake of fulfillment in life, that you will, the net result of that will be like a commodity in value and gathering money as a result of it, not the primary means. And I think that's what aggravates me the most about a lot of the influencer culture right now, is it seems like it's all around this. Yeah, do you want to make zillions of dollars with zero time and this bullshit, man? It's just like everybody's so hung up on the things that don't matter and de-evolutionizing, like I'm making that term up. I don't even know if it's a term, but you know what I'm saying? It's like, yeah, spend time in a library. The libraries are still there. They're still open. Train your brain to look for information in a book and read the book. That's valuable time. Slow down. This whole book a day bullshit that came out through Tai Lopez and all that. It's like, human beings are not meant for that. And don't be in a hurry. There's no hurry. In every book that you read, you could come up with something, could spark inside you that then you create something that's valuable to people in the world today and for generations to come. That's what you're looking for. And if you get lucky and make a bunch of money, that's great. But this grinder entrepreneurial culture is just sickening today. And I'm going to read what you wrote because I love it so much. That article that you posted at leftcoastcaveman.com, the mentality piece. What's it titled?
Man's Gotta Know His Limitations.
Man's Gotta Know His Limitations, yeah. And I read it on the airplane. What's that?
Mr. Eastwood said it back.
Yeah,
matter of fact, that's my screen name today, Clint Eastwood. So
yeah.
Also homage to the man himself.
You always do that, but it was cool that you told that story about sitting on the couch with your dad. And I often thought that it'd be cool to do a series on patriarchy and going through and spending some time traveling and interviewing all of the patriarchs of our family and talk to them about the men that they remember and what those men meant to them. That's what made me, when I read the intro to your article, it made me think about that. But I grabbed this quote from it, and I know it's going to feel icky to you to have your own words written back to you, but read back to you, but I like it. And there was a couple of zingers in there, but I really like the one that you said, despite what any because I was really pissed off about influencers this week, and it was kind of cool to read it. But it said, despite what any pseudo-influencers claim under the montages of not sleeping and perpetual grinding, we all must acknowledge the deception of this route. We need sleep. We must nurture our relationships, be dads. And sometimes we need to simply restart the brain through ritualistic doses of zoning out via a movie, some drinks, etc., or perhaps a bad fiction book. I just thought that was cool, like a moment of honesty. And really, this idea of not being in a hurry and thinking about my 19-year-old niece and just myself, and always getting don't to not be to know that sometimes a little bit of leisure is actually productive, and the rest that you get or the ideation that you get, and think about what being in constant go mode does to the brain. Are you allowing enough space to ideate and to make sure that you're on your path? We talk about the path. How do you know if you're just never take time to evaluate or to look at the relationships around you, like you said, or to be a dad, to be, I was talking to somebody, I can't remember who, a couple of weeks ago, just about like, yeah, when I'm like, you're going to see me 40% less. I'm going to be around 40% less. I notice that when I get super busy, and if I'm trying to crush it in something, build a new business, build a new idea, build a new product, something, or spend a lot of time in planning and developing people or something like that, that relationships suffer. My ability as a dad suffers, and all of those things are productive because you never know. I mean, you might come up with your next biggest idea or your purpose in life in one of those moments, one of those down moments. That's why I find it most valuable in a book, just leisurely reading, letting it go, developing your character, developing yourself, developing who you are,
Yeah, and it gets harder to do that as you layer upon different complexities or responsibilities of community, of family, of your job, your role, whatever that is. The time dwindles down and you only have so much. I mean, energy really is, I think it's finite. Some people say it's infinite, but gotta sleep every night, and there's just literally only so many waking hours to do all these things. And, obviously you want to do all of them, but you acknowledge the fact that if you focus on one in an unbalanced way, which you absolutely have to sometimes, it's actually quite strategic, but let it be known that other things will suffer. And that's part of that balancing equation. And when people, they falsely claim that you can do it all and just grind, it's like, dude, there's no balance in that. That's why it's bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
And granted, like, where are these people? Granted, they're doing a great marketing, campaign, and they're in my opinion probably actors, right? And those, I don't buy that these are the people that are super successful truly from a knowledge perspective, from a health perspective, from a, let's see in 10 years, man, like how many pills do you want, and how much therapy do you have to fucking go through, and how many relationships with people have you fucked over during that time of grinding and being an entrepreneur and achieving that alpha, that sigma situation. I as I get older, I'm learning that the balance is super important, man. And that's not to say that you shouldn't strive for other things, but just be strategic about it and remember that you have to, there's a loading and an unloading phase. I was actually just reading about this, from a lifting perspective, and loading is more about when you're anabolic, you're fucking doing your power work, max strength work, your strength endurance. Unloading is going to be your yoga, is going to be your hot cold plunges, it's going to be your active recovery, your walks, right? So like these things are fucking, you're sleeping, and it's like, dude, you actually will spend more time unloading if you think about it than you will be actually loading, right? You think about that model body, you got a great body, Mark. How often do you work out? 1 to an hour and a half a day, let's say. Well, the rest of the day you're not fucking working out. You're recovering, you're eating, you're fueling, you're fucking sleeping, right? And like that's what's responsible for that amazing. It's is it an hour or is it the fucking 23 other hours during the day that is responsible for your form? So I think there's something to that where you have to just be very strategic and balanced and I actually just wrote an article about that, as a matter of fact. I call it the Utopia Protocol, and it's about the perfect workout, which it's kind of the name's kind of a joke in itself, because what utopia means, it's Greek and it stands for 2 words. It's no place. Utopia is no place, even though we think of that as, it is supposed to, essentially represent perfection, but in the word itself, there is no perfection. That's what's kind of interesting about that term. But I used it kind of colloquially as like, it's a workout that's very balanced, and it's a great starting place, but it's not the panacea of all workouts. Like, it'll solve all your fucking gains problems. It'll fucking make you the best athlete, whatever domain. No, by no means. It's just balance, and it pulls from all the main modalities to try to give you just the circle of a workout. Whereas, is that the right thing to do if you're an athlete? Like you're a baseball player? Absolutely not. You need to periodize. You need to fucking spend time in these certain areas. But for the busier people and I just think, and people that don't have a coach or aren't really putting a lot of thought or as much research into how they're structuring their workouts by week, by month, by year to goals. This is just kind of a cool way to just touch all bases. Maybe if you're on the road or you don't have a gym at your disposal. And these are, anyways, it's the Utopia Protocol. You guys can find that on leftcoastcaveman.com. Check it out. I think it's, as we're touching on right now in this conversation, it's more than just a workout. It's kind of a mindset.
Yeah. Is it under the fitness modality section?
Indeed, it is.
Indeed. That's cool, man. I think that I'd like to read it because I've got I should post we got to get the commenting back on because I've got some stuff on some material on the perfect workout as well, or what every fitness modality ought to include, or every workout ought to include. But yeah, I think that you make a couple good points, and one, when you're talking about down the road and thinking about when you envelop yourself into, or you pour everything that you have into any one thing, whether it's being a mom, being a dad, being your career, whatever it is, there's danger in what does the downstream look like for you. And that's why it's important to think about that now and create something, become part of a community that stands for something that's long-term, that's lifelong, and that synergistically works with your career, your parenting, your relationships, your lifestyles, because that way you don't sacrifice one for the other. If becoming a Muslim or becoming a Christian or becoming in the Church of Scientology is like what you envelop yourself in, like what are you sacrificing as a result of that? And to some that might be fine. I think that the point I'm trying to make is the more you can align your path with in a synergistic way that links all of those things, your fitness, your friendships, your parenting, everything works as part of that, then you're constantly feeding all of the buckets instead of spending all your time as and you see people get stressed out and relationships suffer, marriages suffer, friendships suffer because people don't think about their life like that. And they don't think about there's going to be 15 years from now, but there's also right now. And you have to think about both at the same time. And it's a balancing act. I mean, it's something I struggle with, obviously, or I would say I'm constantly aware of or constantly wrestling with. I mean, is this decision or is this direction I'm going in keeping with my most primal sense of self and authentic sense of self? And I think that we've talked about this before, this whole Maslow's hierarchy of needs, before it was food, shelter, water, and then it became love, and now it's self-actualization is the highest order of need. And I definitely see that with everything that we do and everything that we discuss. It's about, well, is this mode of fitness that you're discussing most in keeping with who your true self ought to be? Is this mode of consuming most in keeping with your most, we call it supreme being in the Left Coast Caveman terminology? And I think that it's important to kind of couch everything that you do in that. And that's why we created this. That's why we do this. That's why we touch base on this. But it's, I don't know, man. I mean, it's kind of this became one big mentality podcast almost, but it was random and just these things that I was thinking about. And we normally do this on a Friday and we do it on a Saturday night. And I don't know, I'm just really thinking about all of these kind of things. And it's, I read the about section of leftcoastcaveman.com and I'm fired up. I'm oh my gosh, how did I lose sight of that? Because it's clearly teeing up what it is that we're doing and ready to launch it and ready to then unfold it for everybody in a very method. It's all in the about section essentially. And then it's ready to be extracted. And one little drip and drop at a time. But one thing I want to tee up for next week, because definitely not going to have time to do it right now. Because talking about fitness modality, the one thing that we didn't talk about was nutrition. And one thing that's really been frustrating me, or one thing that frustrated me today, I should say, is all right. So like all last week, pretty much, I didn't really drink at all, but my diet was kind of wishy-washy at best because I was traveling. So I don't think I was getting as much protein as I normally would, and definitely not as much vegetables. I do the, what's it called? Green Vibrance. So I try to get like some micronutrients and superfoods and greens supplemented, but I'm not doing my EAAs as much. I'm not doing my protein as much when I'm on the road. And then I get to where I'm like up all night, essentially, last night or the night before, because I wake up and whatever. I lose track of time when I was traveling, but not much sleep. Get home, drink a lot of red wine, eat nothing but chicken and vegetables for dinner and turkey. So just nothing but protein and vegetables. Smash on some cookies, probably some more red wine, a couple more like June shines, drank more than usual, ate more than usual, ate a bunch of cookies. And I've been on the cookies like all week. Cookie binge every night. I'm at least 3 or 4 pounds heavier than I normally am. But today I woke up, dude, and I was just like juiced. Just like jacked, just like ready to drop and do 150 push-ups, and just like, I don't know what that's all about. Was it the protein intake? And I was really thinking about that because last night, one thing I can say that I had a lot of was protein. And protein in a good, clean format. Lots of good poultry, I should say. That tends to agree well with me. And I don't know. I mean, teeing up the whole protein conversation. Same thing with Thanksgiving dinner before that. Was what I had nothing. I went to a Brazilian steakhouse and ate like pretty much nothing but, you know how that deal is. It's like $65 and
the best. Turn that fucking chip green the whole time, baby.
Yeah.
Salad bar, let's go.
I didn't even go to the salad bar. I figured out the order of operations there. They want you to go to the bar, and then they start bringing the chicken. We're like, no, man, bring the steaks out. We had to tell them. And so I don't know, man. It's just, but I guess the point I'm trying to make is like, how do I optimize that so I feel like that all the time? Or can you feel like that all the time? Is it nutritional related? Was it the red wine? Was it the influx of a bunch of high quality protein? That just, I mean, I'm telling you, I got up and I'm like, you know how it is. Like when you're a little bit more swole, your shirts are fitting a little tighter, and you're just like, give me whatever weight. I need to lift something.
Yeah, well, I mean, there could be a lot of things going on right there. I mean, looking at it from a macro perspective, I'm assuming you had almost a week off of work. You've been traveling, you've been
working
the whole time. Okay.
Yeah, and I mean, I would say stress level about the same. Still working. I mean, probably a little bit less on because you get a little bit of downtime for the holidays. But the stress of the travel, I think it's either one. I mean, I think it's either that or maybe I'll talk to you offline about what else it could be. But let's say it's in the Taoist calendar realm.
Okay. Yeah. But I mean, think about, okay, so it's a slower work week. So just, I would say, even if you were working, most people kind of weren't. So you're probably getting a third of the emails usually are. I don't know about you, man, but I completely, after like Thursday, dude, fucking nobody was working. I mean, I worked like a half day, and I'm not thinking about anything. I haven't thought about work, and I'm like, I got another day of not thinking about it. It's like, I'm really feeling fucking refreshed. I'm not a guy that vacations, so this is like 4 days is usually the longest I go. Like in terms of not thinking about work. So, I mean, I'm refreshed just from that. So I imagine there's some of that, but also judging, I'm going to go on a limb. I'm not no nutritionist, but a few things. One, I would say it's hard to get the right amount of protein every day. If you're not making a conscious effort to supplement with protein, I almost feel like it's impossible to get the amount of protein you fucking need every day for an active person. And I'll share something right now. Actually, I didn't even check it. So this will be a good experiment because I metriced all the food I ate today to see how close I came to my protein. So for today, I'm coming in at 106 grams of protein. So I'm probably, 60 grams off what I should be eating for today.
That's a lot. Yeah, that's a big gap.
And you think about like
what you're doing 0.8 per body fat?
Yeah, well, yeah, I think that's the one of the metrics they use. And
0.8 per pound?
Yeah, per pound.
Of weight? So
but there's some that say per kilogram of, it gets confusing, and I try to sift through that best I can on the article under nutrition with protein. But yeah, it's a kind of complicated area. But I mean, that gives you an idea. I mean, I think the best one, because kind of a middle ground is almost 1 gram per pound. So I'm 195. I need about 195 grams of protein. I'm almost half below that. And you think about what I ate today, dude. For lunch, chicken breasts. For dinner, ribs. Had some cheese, some mushrooms, some greens. And even with that diet, only 100 grams. So you think about how difficult it is for somebody that's primarily eating protein to fucking fall short. Now, did I supplement today? No. So I would need to, pop off 3, 20, 40, 60, about 3 cups, which I totally could right now, protein shake, 3 scoops. What's that? About fucking 60 grams of protein, and it'll just about shore up the distance where you need to be. So that's one thing. I think you mentioned you got lots of meat. You went that Fogo de Chão, the Brazil place, whatever it's called. Obviously Thanksgiving, you said you ate a bunch of meat. So yeah, you could have been protein. You finally getting appreciable amounts of protein, and or once again, I'm not a nutritionist, but going off your body, like your body seems to respond really well to carbs. You can eat carbs and burn through them really quickly. And I remember at Sparta, you got really cold that one time, and I was like, but you ate some food, and you're like, it seemed like you burn, like you have a fast furnace. And I wonder with all, like, even though you're eating not great foods, all the wine, the June shines, the fucking the cookies, but you were carb loaded. You had fuel in your body. You had the protein ready for fucking to stimulate muscle synthesis, biosynthesis, and then you had the carbs, the fucking glucose, which gets broken down and into the Krebs cycle and produces that fucking beloved ATP, necessary to contract a muscle. So I feel like that. I mean, and maybe you slept really well too. Fuck, man. I mean, you can destroy the world after a good night of sleep. It's multifaceted, super confusing. There's a lot going on, but those are just a few of my theories. I would think for and I don't know if you recreated all those circumstances, could you do it consistently day in, day out? I don't know.
Yeah, I would take it even if I could pull it off 3 days a week. I mean, I like the feeling. I've always enjoyed the feeling, and I think that we should definitely dive into protein intake off the top next week, because that's one that we've been on the burn. I'm glad we did this today because we kept missing the appointment, but that one is definitely top of mind as far as, and I'd like to sort of look more into kind of that anabolic mode, and because it feels good. I think I've got a hypothesis, and I want to wait and share it, and I want to test it a couple times this week. But I do have a hypothesis, and I think it is, like you said, multifaceted. It has a lot to do with the nutrition. Definitely and it has something to do with the fitness modality. And it also has something to do with, let's say, a mentality that also has a physical component to it. Retention. Yeah, retention. And that doesn't mean like abstaining. It just means not taking it across the finish line when you do. And I think that's called those 3 things combined. I think that I'm going to play around with it a little bit more, though, and see if because it's got to have, I think it's definitely testosterone related or anabolic mode related because of a triple threat, as we do here, the mentality, the fitness, and the nutritional playing together well, all leading into one. But everything has its season. Like you said, I don't think that it's a sustainable long-term deal, because eventually I'll get back into the triathlon training as well, and I've not been doing that, so I'm not burning as much. So I don't look as good with my shirt off, but I definitely look better with my shirt on. Filling it out a little bit more, and I'm definitely like ready to lift and just feeling jacked. Whereas, doing a lot more cardio and things like that, get shredded up, but not so like beastly.
You gotta lift some heavy weight, buddy. That's the key to that one, dude. Just throw weight in the air. It's an amazing concept, an amazing feeling. It is indeed a different, when you lift heavy weights, it's a different like post-workout feeling than if you were to run, do a bike ride, do jujitsu. It's different. And I'm not better, but I don't lift weights that often. I lift weights about 1 day a week, and not always heavy. But after that one workout, it's a different, amazing feeling. I can't put it into words, but it's definitely there. It's different and it's cool, and it keeps me coming back. And also, who doesn't want to fucking have a little, some shoulders going up to their ears and shit? You know what I mean?
Yeah. And getting that jiu-jitsu, that definitely always puts me in an anabolic mode too. I've noticed that with doing jiu-jitsu at least once a week. Because you're not lifting heavy weights, but you're manipulating a 180-pound human being, and that's like recruiting every single musculoskeletal piece of equipment you have in your body. The whole meat machine's engaged, and the mental engagement and just the battle. There's definitely something that kicks in a higher anabolic mode when you're doing combat training every week. And that's another thing I got to get back into. Got to get a training partner, man. So
yeah, well, it's you tie
consistency.
We love to bring back in old Jordan Peterson, but he talks about, obviously, in that first book. We all know the adage of the him and his old graduate students with the lobsters, their hands going up, and that's a sign of high dope. I think it was dopamine, or it was an oxytocin, one of those neurotransmitters. I don't recall exactly, but the one that you experience like a flush of when you win, especially in like combatives, right? And so they talk about the ones that start losing. Well, they start holding their pitchers down lower, and they have less access to mates, and their immune system takes the shit. But it's interesting though about jiu-jitsu, because you talked about the anabolic side of it, but there's also a catabolic side of it, especially when you're starting out, or if you're just certain situation or in a challenging environment where you come away from sparring and you lose all 5 rounds. You don't have your pitchers up high. They're down low. And I tell you what, man, I've had a few of those where I'm driving home and I'm feeling pretty down. Like, you just had an amazing hour and a half workout and you got your ass kicked, or maybe you didn't do as well as you thought. And and I know what's going on psychologically. I have lesser of these hormones flowing or neurotransmitters flowing because I lost. I was not the victor. And whereas those other training partners, they're fucking right now, dude. They're walking around. They got so that's something I think about. It's important. Like, hey, that's why if you're going to structure, once again, sorry to get too deep into it, but like, if you're going to structure your workout, even your sparring, you need to structure it in a way that, hey, one guy's better than you. He's going to whoop your ass. You're going to learn from him. Your claw's going to go down a little bit, and then you're going to go against a new guy, and you're going to, you're going to have low risk success, meaning you'll be able to experiment, do new things, and you're going to win, and you're going to maybe teach, and all that's going to raise your claw status. And then I feel like one of the more critical ones is that middle ground, your peer, your cohort, that middle person where it's sporting, it's challenging, and you might win, you might not. Some days you're going to drive home fucking with your claws down low. Some days you're going to drive with your claws up high. But I mean, that's life in general, right? That's going to happen no matter what. Every day is different. I mean, you can't always be happy, and that's okay. I think that's not a realistic approach anyways. But yeah, I started thinking more about just being careful with, you can't always lose. I mean, there's literally a problem with always losing. And yeah, you do lose a lot. I mean, you learn a lot from losing, but you have to fucking have those wins. It's required. And it's up to you to figure out how to win, And it's like, how many people give up before they experience those wins? And this maybe ties into what we're doing at Left Coast Caveman is, we've got to continue to fucking drive forward and fucking strive for those wins. You can't just get discouraged right off the bat and go, oh, it's not working, fuck it. Some chick with bigger tits and shakes her ass a little bit, she's got 4 million views every week. It's like, so you have to just persevere. Once again, back in the path, having that discipline, having that, just the endurance to continue,
Indeed. And I would say a cave meditation for this week would be for anybody, and going back to the conversations I've had this week and thinking about the mentality and the even nutritional modality or fitness modality is set yourself up for those little low risk wins. I love the idea of, oh yeah, you say you don't have time to go work out, like just drop and do 10 push-ups 10 times a day. Figure out that little win, and that'll get your claws up a little bit more. Or, it's to me, and that's what bothers me so much about the influencer culture promoting the idea of money as the means or money as the goal, because it's not helping people as much as create something worthwhile, period, and make little incremental moves towards that. That's like you were saying with Coast Caveman. Yeah, if some chick with a fine ass is putting that stuff out and getting a bunch of views, yeah, would it be good to have that attention? Could we monetize that attention in a more productive and better way? Of course. But one little incremental step forward every single day, claws go up. Yeah. And guess what? Eventually you're going to die. And everybody is. And it's either you're dying closer to that goal or further away. Period. Yeah. And money has nothing to do with it.
And I feel like one like, I don't know, this kind of popped in my mind today, thinking about it. I was just inspired by a few things you said, and just thinking about the influencer, right? And who are they trying? Who's their target to influence? The individual that they're trying to influence somebody for 30 seconds for fucking whatever a short is. I want to look at this project as not only just an influencing project, because it is a way of influence, it's a way of sharing ideas, which influence is kind of a way of sharing ideas and getting people to think differently, and and it's reciprocal in that, especially from a community perspective. But I think looking at we're not just here to influence, quote unquote, influence people for 30 seconds. We want to influence certain aspects of their life that tie into bigger things that get momentum and change other ways of looking at people they talk to. And I want to look at this as more like a generational project. You know what I mean? It's not about like the people, it's about influencing the next fucking our kids. You know what I mean? Like those, like that's the kind of scope, that's the scale we need to be looking at this is. And it just dawned on me that is kind of, almost, it's not like that was what I was trying to do, but I think inadvertently it's happening that way. You think about the people you talk to, you think the ideas you espouse. So, once again, the butterfly flaps its wings and fucking creates a hurricane over here, all that stuff. There's something to that momentum that fucking, it gains speed as it travels through, until that terminal velocity and beyond. So, I never thought of it that way, and I think I need to more. Maybe, I don't know, maybe you have thought of it that way, but this is like a generational movement here. This is high quality, influencing. And I hate that word so much. We're going to figure out a different word to use than influence, but.
No, and we've talked about this before, back when we first started this several years ago with let's create a body of work that we know that our children can look at and say, wow, this is something valuable to them, to us, and how do we codify it in a way that is, I think, getting it out and then figuring out how to organize it in a way that helps, that feeds to people's need for quick and turnkey information. There's nothing wrong with that, but creating the valuable resource for ourselves and then for our community, our tribe, our cave people around us, and helping them create community, inviting them to bring it in. If you're into knitting, get back into knitting, create something. If you're into baking, how can you create supreme being through modern hunting and gathering with your baking? Come and be part of our community. Join us in this quest for eradicating the bullshit and this drive towards monetizing, influencing, consuming. It's always going to be there, but can we create more of a community around people that are trying to be better, supreme being, through modern hunting and gathering, leveraging the resources around us, but doing it in a way that's in keeping with our primitive selves, primitive well-being, and like get rid of the bullshit, get rid of here's a $10,000 piece of equipment and stick this up your ass and that up your, wherever else, and be a weirdo and grow a man bun and a beard and, sing Kumbaya and that shit. It's like, talking about real people with real things going on in life, kids, jobs, careers, you name it, friendships, marriages, whatever. These foo-foo motherfuckers out there just, I'm getting sick of it. And I don't know, I'm thinking about starting a puppet show to make fun of them, because I bought like $200 worth of puppets like a year ago, and I'm thinking of what to do with them. It's not a joke.
You've invested. It must be done now.
Yeah, so I'll leave it at that, but always a good time, brother. This was a Left Coast Caveman podcast that was completely off the cuff on a Saturday night. Now it's 10 p.m. And I'm going to call it a night. Enjoyed reading your stuff. I'll read your fitness modality that you put up this week, and you'll see some articles from me now too. I'm fired up. So I need to just do it earlier in the day, because once the caffeine's wore off, I'm just worthless on the keyboard. So that's a wrap, brother. Have yourself a good rest of your weekend. Well done and well said, Mr. Forrest. It was a great time. Thanks again. All right, man. Take care. See ya.